All systems that I consider are very important for our life. Agriculture, that is in risk because of the climate that is changing every day, and we are at risk as a human beings. Then we have the fishing. It's an important way to find food for people. And the last one is organic food, that is made from, this food has the characteristic that it doesn't use pesticides and is more healthy for the human beings. Thanks.
Systems that provide us with food are croplands, which is used mostly for producing grains, which provide about 76% of the world's food. Rangelands that produce meat, mostly from grazing livestock, which supply about 17% of the world's food, and oceanic fisheries that supply about 7% of the world's food.
The types of animals and plants that feed the world are cows, chicken, and plants can be fruits, vegetables, etc.
The types of plants and animals that feed the world are all the things that you can see in a farm, like cows, different crops that they grow, like fruits.
Cows, fish, chicken, crops that grow on farms. Yes.
Although the Earth has perhaps 30,000 plant species with parts that people can eat, only 15 plant and 8 terrestrial animal species supply an estimated 90% of our global intake of calories. Just 3 grain crops, wheat, rice, and corn, provide more than half the calories people consume. These 3 grains and most other food crops are annuals, whose seeds must be replanted each year. 2/3 of the world's people survive primarily on additional grains, mainly rice, wheat, and corn, mostly because they cannot afford meat. As incomes rise, people consume more grain, but indirectly in the form of meat, mostly beef, pork, and chicken, eggs, milk, cheese, and other products of grain-eating domestical livestock. Fish and shellfish are an important source of food for about 1 billion people, mostly in Asia and in coastal areas of developing countries. But on the global scale, fish and shellfish supply only 7% of the world's supply, less than 6% of the protein in the human diet, and 1% of the energy in the human diet.
I think that the major food productions are agriculture.
The major food productions are agriculture and factories.
The two types of agriculture systems are industrialized and traditional. Industrialized agriculture or high-input agriculture uses large amounts of fossil fuel, energy, water, commercial fertilizers, and pesticides to produce huge quantities of single crops or livestock animals for sales, practiced on about 25% of the all cropland, mostly in developed countries. High-input industrialized agriculture has spread since the mid-1960s to some developing countries. Plantation agriculture is a form of industrialized agriculture practiced primarily in tropical developing countries. It involves growing cash crops on large monoculture plantations, mostly for sale in developing countries. Traditional agriculture consists of two main types, which together are practiced by about 2.7 million people, 44% of the world's people in developing countries, and provide about 20% of the food supply. Traditional subsistence agriculture typically uses mostly human labor and draft animals to produce only enough crops or livestock for a family survival. In traditional intensive agriculture, farmers increase their inputs of human and draft labor, fertilizer, and water to get a higher yield per area of cultivated land to produce enough food to feed their families and sell for their income.
If I'm correct, malnutrition versus undernourished. Is that what you said? Undernourished means it's a lack of nourishment, vitamins, minerals, and things that your body need, but malnourished is like a different level. Like, it's almost like skinny and emaciated.
it's not the same thing. So malnourished is someone that is at extreme levels, I believe, but undernourished is people who don't get their daily recommendations of things, if I'm correct. I might be wrong, but somewhere along those lines. But definitely malnourished is more severe than undernourished.
Thank you.
Well, for me, I think there's different types of malnutrition. For example, kids that don't eat like all the 3 meals during the day, or people that eat like bad food like McDonald's every day. For me, that's malnutrition.
People who cannot grow or buy enough food to meet their basic energy needs suffer from undernutrition. Chronically undernourished people consume between 100 and 400 fewer kilocalories per day than they need to maintain body weight and undertake light activity. People who are forced to live on a low-protein, high-carbohydrate diet consisting of only grains, such as wheat, rice, or corn, often suffer from malnutrition, which is deficiencies of protein and other key nutrients. Many of the world's desperately poor people, especially children, suffer from both undernutrition and malnutrition.
Overnutrition is serious because everything in excess is dangerous.
Overnutrition is a type of malnutrition that is when you take more nutrients than you need.
Overnutrition is bad because everything in excess is bad.
Undernutrition and malnutrition is serious, but here is some good news. Despite the population growth, according to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, the average daily food intake in calories per person in the world and in developing countries rose sharply between 1961 and 2000 and is projected to continue rising through 2030. However, according to the FAO, World Bank and WHO, some bad news is that each year, at least 10 million people, half of them children under age 5, die prematurely from undernutrition, malnutrition, increased susceptibility to normally non-factorial infectious disease such as measles and diarrhea because of their weakened condition from malnutrition and infectious diseases caused by drinking contaminated water.
Genetic engineering is when you modify the genes of an animal to produce a certain species.
Genetic engineering is when you modify the genes and structure the way you want them to be.
Genetically modifying things.
Genetic engineering of food crops is the insertion of an alien gene into a commercially valuable plant or animal to give it new beneficial genetic traits. Such organisms are called genetically modified organisms or GMOs. In comparison to traditional crossbreeding, gene splicing takes about half as much time to develop a new crop or animal variety, cuts costs, and allows the insertion of genes from almost any other organism into crop or animal cells.